Our study today, as you can see, is entitled Good and Evil. And I must confess that although I had a hard time trying to formulate logical and reasoning ideas to bring here, I actually had a lot of fun doing this study, because I found some things that lessened the way that we see people and we see issues in our world today. And for me, it was pretty positive and pretty enlightening, and so I hope that this is actually going to be the same way for you. As you guys can see here are the sources of the books that we have used. The book by Leon Denis has not yet been translated, although all of the other ones that are noted here are available. And then we also have a website that we use called CLSGvideos.com. And it was an article that we read called The Psychology of Good and Evil. When we look at our world today, do we think that there is more good or more evil in our world? More evil? Who said that, Elsie? More evil. We're going to find out what the Spiritist doctrines and the modern lectures that are being done and conducted have to answer. So our study is based on chapter 3 of the book Genesis, Miracles and Predictions According to Spiritism. And then of course, we are going to bring this topic because it's one that has a lot of people questioning. What is going on in our world today? Like Elsie said, there seems to be more evil than goodness happening at our current world. And so when we pose this, how do we see evil? How do we understand it? What is evil? What is the origin of evil? Is there a duality in our universe, good and evil battling each other out, where we are exposed to this? Does that force strengthen our evil and weak side to come out? These are questions that we are going to be talking about today. So this psychological study that we are bringing here, done by a gentleman called Dr. Steve Taylor, is one that Eckhart Tolle has saying that is contributing greatly in this time of our modern world where there is a shift in consciousness. It's interesting that they call it a shift in consciousness because more and more transpersonal psychologists are working with people so that they can work within themselves in understanding that there is a pretty special time of our world today. Something's changing, something's moving, but it's not just an outside changing force, it's inside as well. So here's how we're going to begin. Steve Taylor says that it's a very dangerous thing to oversimplify, to believe that some people are innately good while others are innately evil or bad, because human nature is infinitely more complex than this. As soon as I read this, I loved it. Because what we're talking about human nature, we're talking about immortal spirits. We are immortal spirits. We have within us a baggage, a historical baggage, where we bring with us a lot of positive factors as well as a lot of negative factors. He talks about the fact that some people have an issue where they do evil things because of what they have been exposed to. So a child that is brought into the world in a family that is abusive, that is aggressive, that doesn't show love, if the nature of that child is to be that way and it hasn't received the guidance on how to work through that, he thinks that those will be factors that will enable a child to do evil things or ill-tempered things. He goes on to say that good and evil are relative. One person's good is another person's evil. The perception of how we see people's actions, they are also flexible. People can be a combination of good and bad qualities, and some people who behave cruelly and brutally can be rehabilitated and eventually display good qualities such as empathy and kindness. I don't know about you guys, but we see this as a pretty extraordinary thing that he says here. Because in reality, we all have good qualities. We have some negative qualities as well. If I act a certain way because I believe that it's the right thing to do, your perception of it might be that I did something ill-intentioned. If you don't have the perception of my inner world, it's going to look to you as if something that I've done is negative. But in the present moment where I am, what I'm doing matters to me. So it's a pretty nice way of trying to understand people and understanding about this flexibility here. Do we all have good qualities? Terry, do we all have good qualities?
Some of us don't.
Some of us don't. Okay, this is really great, what you said. Some of us don't. I was just talking to Biga about a book that I read. I was proofreading it because it's going to come out soon. And the name of the book is called Sex and Destiny. It's a book that Chico Xavier channeled with the spirit Andreia Lewis and Val Vieira. And so they talk about these two families that are entangled with a situation. They talk about the consequences of the misuse of sex and the obligations that we have within the family. And there is a spirit there who is inferior, he's discarnate, and he's actually a person key in the whole story because he is actually allowing this other person who is in tune with him, incarnate, to do some pretty evil things. As going as far as wishing to sexually abuse his own adoptive daughter. The end of the story is amazing because we see this character who's a discarnate spirit and he's evil. He likes to drink, he likes to be a negative influence in the life of Claudio, who is the character. And in the end, in the name of love, he is offered an opportunity to be of service for the one that he loves, who is on the bed about to discarnate. And it's amazing the shift that he does. He does a whole turnaround in the name of love. The inferior spirit that we saw throughout the story imposing itself, suggesting ideas that are negative for Claudio, becomes a good spirit of service. And this is where I like Steve Taylor's talk about the kind of flexibility that we all have in having good qualities as well as sometimes bad qualities, and how we can be rehabilitated like the spirit was and eventually display the good qualities that we talk about. So as we go forward, we are going to ask you guys, what is the origin of evil? Where does it come from? Ignorance. Good, that's a good answer. Some people debate that the origin of evil is from God. God created everything. He must have created evil, right? Some of those questions are posed, and they're natural and normal to ask and question. I like when people ask questions. Leon Denis, the ever-loving poet, says that the origin of all evil resides in our lack of knowledge, our ignorance and moral inferiority. That's what he says. But he also states that for those who have no spirituality whatsoever, the materialist, this aspect of evil is something that is always going to exist. There is an origin for it, but they believe that it's something that is always going to allow people to suffer endlessly. So there is an origin and there is no end for the vision of the materialist. He will say that the materialists believe that evil will be present in humanity forever, although it might be weakened. It might be weakened because our knowledge and our awareness will grow, yet we will never find consolation for the things that actually make us suffer in life. Like, for instance, not having answer for the calamities, the natural disasters that happen, the evil of nature, or a death of a loved one. They never find the hope and the consolation needed in order to see through some of the sufferings in life. This is where we see spirituality playing a very important role. Because with a sense of spirituality, I'm not talking about spiritism, but I'm talking about something that offers us a solid ground to step on. We won't have that rational faith. That which Allan Kardec talked about that unshakable faith that can meet reason face to face in every human epoch. Allan Kardec said that in order for us to have faith, a base is necessary. And this base is the perfect intelligence of that which one believes. To be a believer is not enough. Above all, it's imperative to comprehend. And so I watched an interview this week about this young lady that talked about the need for us to have faith in order to be moral, in order to have good qualities. And then this interviewer said to her, I have to ask you, in order for me to be a moral person, do I have to have faith? What would your answer be? No. No. A lot of people profess no belief in any religion at all, and they do a lot of good. But what Allan Kardec is talking about is having a faith that is reasoning, that has logic, that we can have an answer for. Spiritism comes and offers us an opportunity to have this unshakable faith. As we talked about, some other people, some other religions talks about the aspect of evil as these two forces in the universe that battle each other out. The devil, the Satan, and other names that are given to it in constant battle with God in trying to guide humanity. One positive force leading us towards the light, and then the other one that is pulling us back, trying to have us do evil things. And then Spiritism comes and will tell us that, with Leon Denis, that the origin of evil resides in this lack of knowledge and ignorance and moral inferiority, and it tells us this is all a temporary state. Do we evolve? Yes, we grow in knowledge. Our awareness expands. Our inferiority is temporary. If we are beings who have good qualities as well as negative qualities, we're talking about this moral inferiority. It's a temporary thing. It's a temporary phase. So what we currently see happening in the world is not the only thing that is going to stay. It's not going to stay forever. Everything around us, however, shows us the kind of quality of the planet that we live in. We live on the planet Earth. It's a beautiful planet. But as beautiful as it is characterized as an imperfect world because we have a station of it for imperfect beings trying to reach perfection. It's kind of confusing, right? Here we are, we inhabit this planet. As well as the planet progresses, we progress. Right now, the evil or the bad things that I see in the world takes over the good ones. But our destinies, the destiny of our planet is that of actually being the opposite. In a world of regeneration where we're headed to, this transitioning phase, evil is no longer going to predominate. Goodness will. How is that going to happen? Right? If planet Earth is this planet where it offers us some tools that are educative, although painful, we find that as we graduate from this, as we learn from this, as we remove from ourselves the characteristics of the kind of inhabitants that make up this planet, we are going to be at places that are more evolved as well. And so, Leon Denis will say that the evil, the sufferings and hardships, attributes of earthly life have a reason for being present. They are the whips, the spurs that stimulate us to go and move on forward. Now this sounds a lot prettier in Portuguese, but his thinking here is about the aspect of the fact that if in our world there is a lot of pain and suffering, it's because it's the tool par excellence that we need right now in order to understand certain things about life. Susanna made a mention here in a time ago on a lecture that she said that if we have a toothache and we don't go see to it, what happens? Huh? Okay, the tooth rots, but the infection can be so great that it can actually travel up, and it can lead to death if left untreated. So pain serves to tell us that something is wrong. Boop, 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 something is not right. What is going on for the pain and suffering to be happening? Is it a stimulant for us to search for answers, to see what's going on. And so this is pretty much what Leon Denis is trying to say, that pain, the ills, the troubles are tools that allow for us to awaken that something is not correct, something is not right. Still, these are all temporary, and it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. Is pain and suffering the only educative tool for us? And that's something that we have to question. Is it the only educative tool? Without our notion of reincarnation, it's hard for us to understand this whole concept about pain and suffering. So Allan Kardec in the Genesis will say that evil is the absence of the good. And the same as the cold is the absence of heat. Just as cold is not a special fluid, neither is evil a distinct attribute. One is simply the negation of other. So we see Allan Kardec saying this, and he's telling us that evil exists and it has a cause. It has an origin right there. But the question is, has God created evil, as some people state? And here's where we find our answer. When there is good, where the good does not exist, evil necessarily does. We were all created simple and ignorant, like Elcio reminded us. And so if there are some people who will show some kind of evil tendencies, where does it come from? So evil exists and it has a cause. Evils of every kind, whether physical, moral, afflicting humankind, form two categories that will be distinguished. And this is the teachings that Allan Kardec bring. One, that human beings can avoid. And here we're talking about free will. And this is why this is funny. Free will, I think they need more structure than that. From not understanding how to properly use the free will. The other, as Allan Kardec will state, has to do with those that are outside of their free will, such as the calamities, the natural disasters that we see in our world. The first one has to do with how we act to certain things and how we react. The question posed by Allan Kardec is here. Are spirits good or bad by nature, or may they seek to improve themselves? And though the answer is clear, they may improve themselves, and as they do, they pass from a lower order to a higher order. The Spiritist study group class that we have here on Tuesday allows us for a lot of comments and some kind of discussion that goes on. It's pretty fun, right, Elaine? That we talk about the order of spirits and how sometimes certain things happen to us so that we can evolve, especially where painful situations are concerned. And so when we see this question by Allan Kardec, we question, why is it that some people are so evil to the core? How do they get to be that way? Were we like that one time? Are we like that right now in certain things? If there's a flexibility where we have good qualities and negative qualities, do we find ourselves sometimes in a position where we allow the side to come out more than the good qualities in the name of jealousy, in the name of pride? And we will find another part of the answer here from Allan Kardec in saying that God created us all simple and ignorant, we already said that, without knowledge, giving all of us a mission. Whether the mission is great or not, it doesn't matter. It is always in accordance with what we can do in this lifetime. It is aimed at enlightening them and progressively leading them toward perfection through knowledge of the truth in order to draw them near to God. In that perfection, they will find eternal bliss without any troubles. Spirits acquire knowledge by experiencing the trials that God has imposed on them. So one of the things that Kardec brings is, we wouldn't know the difference between ascending and descending if there were no mountains to climb. True or false?
True.
We wouldn't know the difference between light and darkness. We wouldn't know the difference between right and wrong if certain things weren't imposed on us for us to learn. All based on actions from our part. Some humbly accept these trials and receive more quickly at their destinies, where others cannot endure them without complaining. We will go as far as saying without complaining and acquiring new debts for them to have to answer to. And so we go on and we look at our world today. We have evolved so much, right? Intellectually, there's so much that science provides for the well-being of people. But there are some things that were used out of the intellect of people for some pretty bad things as well. We have this new generation that are incarnating among us. Kids that are graduating college before they're finished with high school. Just saw that a girl in Boca Raton, she just finished FAU. She's not even done with her junior year in high school yet. She's going to be done when she's 18, and she's going to have a whole degree of whatever it is that she's going for, I think somewhere in the field of sciences. And so we ask, aren't we a little bit behind? Cesar Hayes is one of the speakers that comes sometimes to Florida, and he said that we as a humanity are behind. Why does he say that? He said, just look at our world today with all of the resources that we have. Why are we applying all of that good intellectual intelligence towards good things all the time? And so he will say that we have reached a level of awareness where scandals should no longer be necessary. Scandals. Chapter 8, blessed are the pure of heart. And the Gospel according to Spiritism talks to us about the need for scandals. And without Spiritism, it would be really hard for us to understand this passage, or without some kind of religious true knowledge to understand this passage here. Some people have that, even outside of Spiritism, in trying to understand what was written in Matthew 18, where Jesus talked about the need for scandals in our world. How do we understand this? The Gospel explains that in ordinary definition, scandal means every action that shocks morality. Okay, here it's a little bit different, because they'll say that it's not only what offends someone else's conscience, but it's everything that results from the human imperfections and the vices that we still have inside of us, whether it has repercussion or not. Everything that we do, whether there are consequences that are bang in your face or not, these are the so-called scandals that they were talking about. So we are going to break this down. It's necessary that there be scandals in the world because human beings, still being imperfect, are inclined to allow the vices to come out more strongly than the good qualities that they have laying dormant inside of them. So it serves as an educative tool. The word evil here, wrongdoing, is the consequences of human beings' imperfections. But it doesn't mean that we have an obligation to make the wrong, to do the wrong thing. Some people will say, well, if it's necessary that there be a scandal in the world, let me be the one to do it. Right? I'm going to be a tool in in divinity's hand. That's not necessarily what he's trying to say. It's necessary that scandals come because we are in a state of expiation, in a world where this is actually going to still allow as an educative tool for us. In the end, we start understanding that the suffering that we are going through might be the result of something that we've brought on ourselves. Kardec will say that once we become tired of suffering, we seek the remedy, the medicine in good. Good should be the antidote for evil. It's sometimes, most of the times, pain becomes the antidote for evil. How many cases do we see in the books presented by Andreia Lewis? How often in the mediumistic meeting do we see spirits that are tired of suffering, of going after people to take revenge, of no longer wishing to turn the other cheek? They get tired, we get tired of suffering, and all of a sudden we just want to go on with our lives. We get tired of the suffering, of the evil. We just want the good. Eventually it's such an impressive force that it's what draws us to it. And this is what they were trying to say. Another aspect here, woe to him through whom scandal comes. This is interesting, that they will explain that since evil, since ill doings, since wrongdoings are always wrong, the consequences are not going to be very good for that person who committed the action. So here's the thing. Sometimes a person unknowingly, you guys remember in the Spirit study group, Elaine, how some people unknowingly become the instrument for divine justice? We talked about I keep saying the lost bullet. What is it? The stray bullet? Stray bullet. I keep saying the lost or the missed bullet. Somebody gets shot. Who committed the action? A drunk driver who was at the right time for that person. Is he going to suffer the consequences if he was used as a tool in divine justice's hand? He will, because he was reckless. But he was also utilized at the time for the other person to be able to answer from some kind of something that might have happened in the past. We're not talking punishment. The law of cause and effect is a law that talks about consequences. Every action that I do today will have a reaction tomorrow. Let it be positive. And that's what they're calling our attention to. Alexander, in the book Missionaries of the Light, talks to us about how we can understand the last phrase. If your hand is a cause for scandal, cut it off. Nobody's supposed to be cutting off their own hands or removing their eyes. This is not what Jesus was talking about. That's an absurd. Alexander explains this pretty well to us. He says, Jesus himself left us food for thought regarding this matter when he said that if our hand or our eyes are cause for scandal, they should be disposed of so that we can enter the temple of life. It is up to us to change that literal image into a simple interpretation of the Spirit. If we have already failed many times in lifetimes of authority, the use of power, riches, physical beauty, or intelligence, it wouldn't be logical to receive another such opportunity in the work of rectification. He's talking about our reincarnatory plan. So this woman comes to Alexander, and Andreia Lewis is listening, and she has her reincarnatory plan in her hand, and she says, hey, I want to thank you about this opportunity. I'm going to be reincarnated soon, but there's a change here I wish to make. What's the change? She says, well, in here it says that I'm going to be physically attractive. She says, I would prefer an unattractive body. I'm not interested in a body like Venus. I'm interested in the redemption of my spirit for eternity. And so Alexander explains that in the aspect of physical beauty, it's pretty dangerous for people to come because they may abuse by the use of seduction to commit all kinds of evils that indebted them, that keeps them behind. How do we utilize what's been given to us, whether it's the physical beauty, or whether it's power, or whether it's money? And this is why sometimes we see misery in our world today. People who sometimes requested that they come without what they abused, in the past. So when we see explanations like this, we say, wow, what is it today that is still cause of scandal in my life that I need to remove and cut away from me? And these are pretty intimate questions that we have to ask ourselves. What is it that still resides in me that allows for the negative qualities to come through more strongly than the good qualities? And this is what we're talking about here. But how can we distinguish between right and wrong? Because some people will claim that they've taken an action because it was the right thing to do for them at that time. How can we truly, consciously distinguish between right and wrong? And here's a question that Kardec himself asked the good spirits. How can we distinguish? And the answer was clear. Good is everything that is in harmony with God's law, whereas evil is everything that deviates from it. Thus, doing what is good conforms to God's law, while doing evil infringes on it. Here we'll add what Hilario in the book Action and Reaction says, that good is the light that frees us. Evil is the darkness that imprisons us. Now, we can raise our hands if we want to, but how many times in this lifetime have we done something that we knew was wrong and we found ourselves imprisoned in a darkness that only we knew how much it hurt? How much better is it when we do the right thing and we find that we're no longer imprisoned? When somebody offends us, as opposed to offending them back and we silence, even if it hurts inside and the tears fall down our face, how much better it is than to respond in the same way and be imprisoned by that cycle of hatred, of the lack of forgiveness, Only those who have gone through understand what he's trying to say. And I know everyone in this room know exactly what Hilario had to say here. Do humans have the means within themselves to distinguish between good and evil? Do we? Yes. When they believe in God and desire to know the difference. God has given them intelligence to discern one from the other. But it goes further. Since we are prone to error, couldn't it be that we be mistaken in discerning good from evil and then believe that we are doing what is good when in reality what we're doing is wrong? And the answer, yes. Jesus said, do unto others what you would want them to do unto you. And that sums it up. So if I am going to do something that is going to affect Elaine negatively, and I think it's the right thing to do, I have to question. The golden rule is something amazing that is for all doctrines, all philosophy, whether a person is religious or not. We all want people to do to us good things. So why don't we do to them the same thing? We go in saying that in understanding what these laws are, we know that God's laws and what is right and wrong, what deviates, what actually takes us away from God. All the laws are written in our conscience. So deep down inside, we are closer to God than what we believe. Sometimes people do negative things because they believe themselves to be very far from the Creator. We are closer to Him than we believe. And we need to start believing that and understanding that so that we can gather strength to do what is right. The other day, somebody said, wrong is wrong even if everybody is doing it. Right is right. It doesn't matter. We know how to discern right now in our current stage. We know what is right and what is wrong. And one of the things that Steve Taylor, the psychologist, Dr. Taylor, talked about is the need for us to have a compassionate look for people. He says that if we are flexible and we all have good qualities and negative qualities, that we have to start looking at people as such. If all of us have an ability to rehabilitate ourselves, and so we bring in the Spirit as light, and we pose this question, that we repulse you, that a Sudanese woman is about to be hung for the fact that she's a Christian? Does it repulse you? Does it make you angry? Do you think it's right that somebody must be killed for professing her faith? Because if that today bothers us, not too long ago in previous incarnations, it might not. We were not the beautiful diamond in the rough we are today. Not long ago, in many existences, we've made some pretty negative things. If we evolve, let us take a look 2,000 years ago. Let's take a look. If we believe in reincarnation, we might have been here many times before. 2,000 years gives a lot of opportunity for us to reincarnate, true? Yes. Let us take a look at some of the pretty horrible things that we have done in the name of power, in the name of religion, in the name of love. Because we were unaware. So if there are people around us that are committing some pretty evil things, what Steve Taylor is saying is that we have to have a compassionate look for them. And what Spiritism says is the very same. Because the higher order spirits, when they see somebody doing something wrong, when they look at us and we feel inferior, they see us as we are right now, not as we will be tomorrow, not as we are right now. They see infinite possibilities and qualities that we have laying dormant inside of us. So it's always a loving look. We talked about the antidote of evil being goodness. But then Hilario in the book Action and Reaction will talk about another antidote that we've already mentioned, which is the pain. The expiation pain is more like it. This says that sometimes we need this because it's the action from the inside outward. Sometimes the painful situations that we go through are in reality readjusting us before divine justice. So marking us on the pathway of times, keeping us in complex mazes of affliction so that we can regenerate ourselves. And I put this picture here because it's as if we can imagine a seed under all the dirt and it's trying to break through the pain evolution that he talks about in the book Action and Reaction. And when we break through that pain evolution and we reason, we have intelligence, We have the pain expiation, a process from where we draw from within, and we are able to grow and blossom in the manner that a flower does. So when we look at ourselves this way, we have to learn to look at other people in the very same way. And that's the kind of compassionate look that Dr. Taylor talks about. We were all created from the very same source. What source is that, Elaine? I always love your answer.
Well, God.
God. And it's love, infinite love. If we were all created from the same source, everyone's essence, regardless of the kind of actions or of the kind of phases that they find themselves in, they are destined to the same place. We are all destined to the same place. We are all one. And this is something that we have a hard time understanding. It is true, Leon Denis will say, the countless transformations during the course of many centuries that the coarse mineral becomes a pure diamond, shining its thousand sparkles. The same happens with the human soul. So here we are, the diamonds in the rough that they're talking about. And everybody's going through this transformation. It's a pretty loving view that they tell us, because no two diamonds are the same. If the spirit is unique, if we are all unique, we're all different, in the same time our essence is the same, our destinies are the same. We were created for love, by the highest degree of love possible that we can even try to imagine in the entire universe. Some people are the kind of diamond in the rough that are still in the deepest part of the earth with the dirt on top of them, not realizing that if they don't transform themselves, they will never see the light. Whereas there are some that have already been aware, and they start working little by little, and the little spark starts coming out. And then there are those who have reached a certain perfection where they're able to shine for all sides. And the highest degree of purity of spirit that we have as a role model and guidance is that pure diamond that we see on our screen in the presence of our Master, Jesus Christ. Do we have a compassionate look to understand and see it this way? Can we see the greatest virtue that is awaiting for us? Leon Denis will say that if in our world we see more suffering than joy, it's because it's the excellent instrument of education for our progress. But he will remind us that there is nothing more beautiful in the entire universe than the ascension of the immortal spirits. When we are already aware of what we have to do, when we elevate ourselves higher and higher, when we seek the light, he says that there is no greater spectacle on the universe. It's such a beautiful sight to see, he will say, and that's where we're destined to. He will tell us that inside everyone, regardless of what they're doing right now, there is an aspiration, that mysterious force that leads us to new heights towards the light, that compels us to the grandeur of love and more elevated destinies, that impels us towards the good and the beautiful all around us. It's no wonder that we look at flickering stars at night. It's no wonder that when the moon is high and full, we stare at it. It's no wonder that when a candle is flickering in the dark room, we become almost mesmerized by it. Or that we are able to sit around a bonfire and seek its warmth. It's no wonder that we constantly seek the light. The book Sex and Destiny says that the sun blazing in the sky is a divine messenger compelling us to march on towards the light. And there is no more beautiful figure than that given by the spirits, telling us exactly our destiny. We learn that all beings evolve. That evil is only the absence of goodness, much like cold is the absence of heat. When we talk about evil and goodness, Divaldo Franco will say that there is more goodness in our world than evil. He says goodness is shy. It doesn't make as much noise as the apparent evil that goes on in the world. So we need to change the distorted vision that we have of our current world and work proactively, enthusiastically, optimistically guiding and encouraging other people to have the same view, because there is enough sadness and depression in the world today. And so we will finish in asking, what are we doing to assist others? Emmanuel, in the book, Living Spring, will remind us that wherever we may be, or whoever we may be, that we need to develop the Christian qualities within us, observing our good side and remembering that we can increase it infinitely, and we can assist others the same way by doing the same thing. So with that, I thank you for your attention.